his investigation had reached a stage at which he should continue his work as a special counsel, and he asked to be so appointed. Upon considering his request, as well as the extraordinary circumstances relating to this matter, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint him as special counsel.
A special counsel named in the Hunter Biden case, but it's the same prosecutor, David Weiss, who was already heading it up, and that has Republicans calling it a cover-up. We're going to get the latest with Lucas Tomlinson on what the White House is saying, former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker on what Weiss is now doing, and GOP presidential candidate Tim Scott on how voters are responding. Plus, the death toll now at 80 in Maui, and the word the Attorney General in Hawaii will be launching a probe into the official response to those catastrophic wildfires. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charles Payne for Neil Cavuto, and this is Cavuto Live. And we begin at the White House, where President Biden so far is staying quiet on the special counsel appointment in his son's case. Lucas Tomlinson is there, though. Lucas.
Well, Charles, it was just a few weeks ago in that Delaware courtroom where Hunter Biden and his family thought his legal issues would soon be behind him. That's not what happened, of course. The issue was immunity. Hunter Biden's legal team thought this, by pleading guilty, he would cop to that guilty charge and all his legal troubles would be behind him. That's not what happened. The prosecutor, David Weiss, said this does not give you immunity. The whole plea deal fell apart, and now the special counsel has been named. Here's more from the Attorney General.
I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint him as special counsel. Mr. Weiss has the authority he needs to conduct a thorough investigation and to continue to take the steps he deems appropriate independently, based only on the facts and the law.
As you mentioned, Charles, the special counsel David Weiss has been investigating Hunter Biden for 5 years now and negotiated what many Republicans called that, quote, sweetheart plea deal. Now, President Biden left the White House yesterday after work for the beach. He did not take any questions before boarding Marine One. President Biden has long maintained his son Hunter did nothing wrong. He also insisted he never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings. But after the testimony from those two IRS whistleblowers and that unsubstantiated FBI informant document alleging both he and Hunter each pocketed $5 million from that Ukrainian energy giant, some speculate it will be Joe Biden now on trial in addition to his son after that plea deal fell apart. Here's some sound from your panel yesterday, Charles, with John Yoo and some others.
It almost comes 2 years too late because as we get more information from the Hill, it looks more and more like President Joe Biden is at least a witness, if not more, in an ongoing federal investigation.
Now, the Justice Department is not commenting on whether President Biden will be part of this future investigation, Charles.
Lucas, thank you very much. Meanwhile, top Republicans slamming David Weiss being named the special counsel. Alexandria Hoff is tracking the GOP reaction down in Washington. Alexandria.
Hi, Charles. You have some Republicans who don't like the idea of a special counsel at all. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer has long felt that the move would take away investigative power from the committee as it continues to probe the Biden family. Here's the congressman last night.
I don't think we need any more evidence to show that the Department of Justice is trying to obstruct our investigation. I think Merrick Garland made that argument for us today.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy stated in a tweet, quote, "This action by Biden's DOJ cannot be used to obstruct congressional investigations or whitewash the Biden family corruption. If Weiss negotiated the sweetheart deal that couldn't get approved, how can he be trusted as a special counsel?" Well, some Republicans are not against the appointment of a special counsel, which could indicate that a case against the president's son could go to trial. For Senator Chuck Grassley, it's Weiss that is cause for concern.
I was one of those that sent a letter saying we should have a special counsel. On the other hand, I have some question about Weiss doing it.
Well, that's because there's been so much back and forth. Whistleblower Gary Shapley testified in May that David Weiss wanted special counsel status because he felt limited in his powers to fully investigate and charge Hunter Biden. Weiss then denied that to be true. Here's one of Shapley's attorneys.
To choose that very same person to go ahead and elevate them to special counsel status when he has been claiming to Congress all along that he didn't need it seems like an odd choice.
Well, critics also argue that appointing a sitting U.S. attorney goes against DOJ regulation, which state that a special counsel should come from outside the Justice Department. Charles?
Alexandria, thank you very much. So what is the impact of this special counsel appointment on Hunter Biden and this probe? Former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker joins me now. Matthew, thanks for joining us. There's so many things, but the initial reaction was, okay, this was all done to sort of delay this, to run the clock out, to postpone any sort of real conclusion until after the election. You heard some of these sound bites coming into it. What are your thoughts on that and the ability to do that as the world is watching?
Yeah, well, good morning, Charles, and greetings from Iowa. You know, my thoughts are that the special counsel regulation is set up so that if there's a systemic conflict of interest, that no one at the Department of Justice can handle a case, for example, by an investigation of a president or their family, then a special counsel is necessary and appropriate. And so, you know, the question is why now? What has happened? What has changed? And I think what has changed is that the Congress and Representative Comer and Chairman Jordan and others have found evidence. There is a lot of smoke surrounding this case, and now they can't sweep this under the rug. Remember, this is on the heels of that sweetheart plea deal.
Right.
I said at the time that I would have laughed that out of my office when I was U.S. Attorney, because it's inappropriate, Charles. And so there's so many things that are stacking up that I think Merrick Garland his hand was forced here, but ultimately it just delays this case even more, and it's been going on for 5 years now.
The sweetheart deal centered around just a couple of specific. Does elevating this to special counsel status now expand the scope of what is being investigated or will be investigated? Because there's so many unanswered questions that, by the way, would not have been answered in that sweetheart deal.
No, they wouldn't have. And remember, the government stood in court and said that, one, this deal has never been done before with any other defendant, and also that, you know, Charles, the most serious crimes have already lapsed. The statute of limitation has run. And, you know, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which gets to the bribery issue here on the firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor, you know, that happened in 2015, 2016 timeframe. So that's, you know, 8 or 9 years old as well. So for me, what it does is it stonewalls Congress's investigation and allows the Department of Justice to hide a lot of evidence behind this special counsel.
So that gets me back to the original question. And we already see where Speaker McCarthy has spoken out about this. He's already issued a release on this. Will the House be able to continue to investigate this to the degree they were on the verge of bringing in the bookkeeper who might have been able to might be able to tie in the joint account between President Biden and his son? Will they still be able to do that, or because everyone's a little frustrated here that, you know, maybe this is a brilliant move on the part of the Biden DOJ to just move this out of the limelight and to make it a non-issue, at least with respect to the election?
Yeah, not only should they continue, they must. In fact, they need to press even harder. They need to start actually getting the people at the front line of this, including the bookkeeper, including members of the family that benefited from these transactions, Charles. I think, you know, there's a lot more here. Congress has done a good job uncovering much of what this scheme was. However, there's still more, and there's still people that know and they should come to Congress, and this special counsel shouldn't interfere with that.
Statute 600.3, the special counsel should not be employed by the U.S. government. You know, that in of itself would supposedly, at least on paper, preclude Weiss from taking this role. Then, you know, you further add in the fact that, listen, he's been the person at this for 5 years, and was ready to accept a really awful deal on behalf of the American public. Should Republicans take the bait and start fighting that? Or is that just one of these things that will, you know, play into derailing all of this? You know, but I think the public should know that it seems like this is an illegal move in of itself.
Yeah, remember, this is a regulation that was implemented by the Department of Justice. It gives the Attorney General a lot of discretion. But you're right. Typically, a special counsel is appointed from outside the Department of Justice because the conflict applies to everyone in the Department of Justice. I'm sure that they're thinking that putting Weiss in here, probably since he was a Trump appointee, that somehow fixes that flaw. But there's a potential here that Merrick Garland put this flaw in to trip up the investigation and to litigate about that issue and to fight about that issue instead of actually the facts and the slowness and the delay that this investigation has been going.
Right. You know, anchoring TV shows, I get that a lot. You know, someone will bring up Sue, and they know the audience will say, hey, get him, Charlie, get him. You know, they'll go on social media. Right. Why'd you let so-and-so get away with that? Because if you focused on that, they get away with not answering the real more critical issues. And so that's why I wondered if this is some sort of a trap. But it should be known. People should know the rules have already been violated. And obviously, you know, the idea, when I heard the words David Weiss trip off of Merrick Garland's lips, I was like, huh? Wait a minute. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's intentional. You know, we're going to have to really, you know, who has all the keys to this car is Joe Biden. He knows what happened, and he needs to be honest with the American people. But right now, the White House is stonewalling, the Department of Justice is stonewalling, and, you know, it looks like that there's really not an adversarial system because, you know, the Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's team are really on the same side, and that's evidenced by that plea agreement they tried to get through a court, and thankfully the judge stood up and said, this doesn't smell right.
What do you think some things have been, you've already mentioned a few things have passed the statute of limitations. So what exactly are we looking at here? What are the valid potential smoking guns that Weiss should be looking for?
Well, he's going to be looking at the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which gets into the bribery issue. He's probably most likely looking at the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which, you know, is clearly, based on all the evidence that's publicly available, has been there's a prima facie case to be made. And then we have all the tax charges and the gun charges. But, you know, this case for Hunter Biden is a lot more serious than it was even a couple weeks ago when he thought he had a sweetheart plea deal. But Joe Biden obviously is what should be investigated and what needs to be investigated.
Will Weiss have the ability to segue this from a Hunter Biden case if the leads lead him to President Biden? Does he have the authority to do that?
Yeah, since 2001, when the special counsel regulation was put in place by the Department of Justice, you've seen these special counsels get very far afield, ask for expanded jurisdiction and expanded authority to go after whatever they turn up. So there could be a chance where this investigation does expand broadly to apply to not only Joe Biden, but family, including his brother James.
Matthew Whitaker, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate that. There was a lot that we didn't understand, and you cleared a lot of it up. Appreciate it. All right, folks, leading candidates for the top office, as we are learning now that the death toll is at 80 and expected to keep rising. We're going to talk to a rescuer on the ground in just a moment, but first, the Fox Weather's Max Gordon in Maui. Max.
Hey there, Charles. Just so much heartbreak here on the island of Maui. Right now, we are on one of two main roads into the town of Lahaina that was destroyed by one of these wildfires. You can see cars parked here, people sleeping in their cars, waiting to get into this town, waiting for the curfew to end at 6 a.m. A lot of people anxious about the state of their homes, and people who have already gotten into the fire zone say that they are devastated by what they've seen. Take a listen.
It's kind of sad to see everybody going without things. We want to help as much as we can, but we have just as much as everybody else, and it sucks because we can't do nothing about it.
Our streets are gone. The whole town is gone. Our life is gone.
Home after home in Lahaina, gone. One estimate from the property data aggregator CoreLogic puts the estimate of destroyed homes at more than 3,000. The rising death toll now at 80 people as rescue crews search for more victims. Thousands of people have now left the island, and around 1,400 are currently staying at emergency shelters here. It's still unclear how these fires started, but when they did ignite, the island was ripe for an inferno. Extremely dry conditions combined with 70 to 80 mile-per-hour gusts caused in part by passing Hurricane Dora fueled the flames and created a challenging battle for the island's firefighters. Residents in Lahaina say they were given little warning of the approaching blaze and that the island's emergency sirens didn't go off, with texts being sent out instead. Many escaping with just their lives. Some in Lahaina jumping into the water to save themselves as this town was razed by fire. The governor just announced a new relief program to rehouse the thousands who now have no home to return to.
This means we will be able to get people into hotel rooms, Airbnbs, and so on, so that they are safe. Look out for your neighbors, love them. That's what we will be defined by in the future, how we take care of our ohana. Aloha.
Power and cell service is now returning to the western side of Maui, but now a new challenge for residents. The water now undrinkable in some areas because it's been tainted by the wildfires. Charles, back to you.
Max, thank you very much. Rescuers descending on Maui to help residents and tourists get off that ravaged island. Brian Stern is the co-founder of Project Dynamo. He and his rescue teams are on the ground in Maui right now. Brian, thank you very much. Just your initial reaction. Your team is there. You've rescued folks in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Sudan. Tell me how this looks when you arrived, because it seems like it's something that even your team has never witnessed before.
Yeah, the damage is total. To use the only word accurate word is total. The whole town of the northwest corner doesn't exist anymore. So we've seen a lot of war, and that's kind of what it looks like. This looks like the front lines of Mariupol, where all the buildings are gone or flattened. We saw this a little bit in Hurricane Ian, but for Project Dynamo, this is our first wildfire that we've ever supported. So it is, that part of it is a little new for us.
Yeah, I mean, the before and after pictures reminded me of Aleppo, which is a major city that's been annihilated. Empty buildings are just a shell of themselves. It looks like bombs have gone off. I read this morning that up to maybe 1,000 or more people are still missing. Your primary mission, is it to rescue? Are you looking for those folks?
Yeah, we're trying to, but it's very difficult. What I'd ask people to do is that if you're, there's no communication on the island, that part of the island. So it's very difficult to figure out who's missing or who just hasn't been heard from. What we would ask people to do is if you have family or friends that are missing and you haven't heard from them, go to our website, projectdynamo.org, and register them. If you give us their address, it makes it so much easier for us to go looking. That's also where people can go to help us. We are entirely donor funded, projectdynamo.org, and you can help us that way as well. But it is a real problem, and these people are on a clock. It's been a few days already. The weather is nice, but it still is hot. And especially the elderly people and the infirmed who have been trapped in their homes, if they're still even alive, are definitely going to run out of time shortly.
We just heard even the water now is an issue there. Even if you're not missing, I mean, just there's a potent, water, that drinkable water. Your team, how large is it? Where are you focused? And how do you evacuate folks from an area like that? Where do you land a helicopter? Where do you pull in an emergency vehicle? How are you going about actually executing this?
So far, we've been doing air operations, partnered with Air Maui. They're a small helicopter company here on the island that is absolutely phenomenal. They're the real unsung heroes from our perspective. They've done great. And Maui Brewing Company as well has been helping us out with supplies and doing supply drops as well. So we've been doing air ops mostly. We want to pivot to ground operations this morning. It's just yesterday the roads opened and then they closed again. So we've been using air as our primary way to get there, but we'll be working on the ground using trucks and that kind of thing, hopefully today.
Brian, you're an Army and a Navy vet, and you've done this around the world. You've helped so many people. It's just amazing that you've done this. Could someone watching this, but they're not part of the organization, but someone watching this, maybe in Hawaii, say, we want to come help, could they just come and help, even though they may not have that specific training?
In situations like this, I get asked this question a lot. In situations like this, there's no such thing as too many resources. Okay. It can be a little overwhelming for the firemen and stuff, and having extra people, but it's a good thing.
We got a hard break. God bless you, man. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you. ProjectDynamo.org.
Spoken with the DC National Guard. And while I have to have more conversations with the chief of police, which I have today, and the mayor and my colleagues, we have a long way to get there. We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're tired of this and enough is enough.
A Washington, D.C. council member saying police not enough to stop violent crime in the nation's capital, and he wants the National Guard to step in. Is that the answer to out-of-control crime? Well, my next guest is out of more than $20,000 after several robberies this year in D.C. at his bar, including one this week. Adam Kalinsky is the owner of the Pursuit Wine Bar and Kitchen, and he joins me now. Adam, to hear a local council member say that the National Guard is needed, to me, speaks volumes. Is he right?
Oh, he is right. I mean, it's terrifying to hear a council member finally say that. I mean, as a business owner and as a citizen, you start wondering what's going on.
For so long, unfortunately, politicians in many cities, including yours, have given out this sort of feeling that anti-police feeling, let's be quite frank about it, you know, and for a while there was talk about even defunding the police, and now the prosecutors won't put people in jail. It feels like they have created the perfect storm for runaway crime. In fact, you can almost say they're seducing folks who may not have a job or otherwise into committing crimes, knowing that they can get away with it. I mean, as someone who's worked hard to build this business, by the way, I've gone to your website. Your bar is beautiful. It's amazing. It's stunning.
Thank you, Charles.
I mean, how does it feel that you're someone that, you know, you want the American dream and that these politicians are looking the other way?
I mean, Charles, I don't know where to start. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian, and watching my city fall to pieces at the hands of these folks that offer up nothing but platitudes, it's heartbreaking. And, you know, we've worked hard to keep this business afloat, and having 5 break-ins. I mean, the criminals these days are so brazen. There is no recourse for the actions they take, right? You said it perfectly, right? They think they have free reign of the city. And honestly, the way the mayor and the council members operate, they're pointing fingers at each other so much they don't have time to pay attention to what's happening to their city. And, you know, staying afloat during each of these incidents is getting harder and harder for us. I mean, think about it. If you have customers out there that are weighing, should I weigh my personal safety, the trade-off between personal safety and going out for a night on the town, that's a hard decision to make. And customers shouldn't have to be making that decision. And unfortunately, that's where we've gotten. Yeah. And I'm hearing the National Guard needs to come in. I mean, this is not the first time. And let's be honest, DC did defund the police. In 2020, during those riots, the mayor stood by on top of a building and watched defund the police get painted onto one of our historic landmarks. And she stood by and encouraged it. Now, what does that tell us to the people today that are sitting there watching this crime play out and having a mayor that doesn't support the police? What are we left with?
What are you telling your employees? You mentioned the consumer who has the way risking, whether or not to get hurt for a night out on the town. What about employees? How can you even get someone who would work in an environment where they're sitting ducks?
You know, Charles, I'll tell you an incident. I was at the bar one night and we had a drive-by shooting and all of us had to hit the deck. I never thought in my entire life I'd be saying that to somebody or having to experience that incident. What do you say to the employees after that, right? I don't want to make promises I can't keep, but at the same time, you got to do something to help them. I mean, their mental health, their well-being, their concern, right? I mean, there aren't words for it, right? And all we can say is, we're here for the community, we're here as a team, and we're going to get through this. But when the mayor and the council members routinely say, well, this is the community's issue, they need to come together and figure out how to solve this, you're left scratching your head. Because are we alone in this? I mean, is the city to be run by its citizens, or do we actually have leadership that's in place that's going to make this thing back to what I remember it used to be?
Adam, again, a wonderful looking place. Rare. The menu is fantastic. I hope people see this and come and come and do business with you. And I hope they can be safe in your city. Thank you very much. And I'm a small business owner as well. I know what you're going through. Stay strong. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We drive less, we eat out less.
Fresh vegetables, fruits, those things are really expensive. I don't see them going down, so I don't think they're getting better.
Everything has gone up. Keep saying inflation is under control. It's not.
Americans feeling the pinch. So is that why President Biden regrets the Inflation Reduction Act, the name? The president reportedly saying that at a private fundraiser, saying, quote, I wish I hadn't called it that. It has less to do with reducing inflation than it does providing alternatives that generate economic growth. So is he right? The government just reported this week consumer prices are on the rise yet again. Consumer prices and producer prices. That's probably why some disapprove of President Biden's handling of inflation. Steve Moore probably thinking that, saying, hey, I told you so. He joins me now along with Democratic strategist Crystal Knight. All right, Steve, let me start with you. I mean, listen, you said all along ahead of this, the Inflation Reduction Act was going to actually throw kerosene on a raging fire of inflation. So that's happening now. President Biden trying to change the message, but it doesn't help the average American, does it?
Sure doesn't. And the bottom line here, Charles, is simple. That since Biden came into office, prices are up by 15%, and wages and salaries to workers are up 12%. So the math isn't complicated here. That means the average worker family has lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 in purchase. Yes, inflation has come down. It was 9.2% last summer. By the way, it was 1.5% when Trump left office. But it's 3.2% now. One other quick thing. When I talk to people, on the street, just like you were at Fox, and ask them about inflation, they don't believe inflation is only 3.2%. Because if you look at what's happened to food prices, gas prices, rent, the kind of things, Charles, you have to buy each week and month, those are up by closer to 10%.
Yeah, and then some of the numbers, like, for instance, airline fares down 8%. No, it's down 8%. Crystal, President Biden trying to pivot here. One thing that has always amazed me with this administration is that they focus so much on public relations, the messaging aspect of it, more than anything else, and they always kind of rush out what they think is going to work. Maybe they got too cute for their own goods with this one.
Well, I agree in some part that the administration has to do.
Inflation is down from a 40-year high. Core inflation at 4.7%. The last time it was at this level before going up was in 1991. There are generations of Americans who have never dealt with this kind of inflationary pain. A family of four with a dad working can't pay all.
Thì mình cảm thấy là một tháng là mình đăng clip nó cũng rất là hơi nhảm luôn. Bản thân mình cũng thấy rất là nhảm, tại vì mình buồn quá. Mình dự tính là một ngày mình ra 2 hoặc 3 video, nhưng mà trong một cái thời gian như vậy, một ngày mình ra 2-3 video, thật sự là cái ý tưởng với lại cái cách quay thì nó nhìn như, nói chung là nó không hay, nó nhảm lắm. Thì mong các bạn thông cảm là các bạn rất là nhiều. Thì hôm nay, bắt đầu từ hôm nay mình sẽ ra một ngày ra một cái video thôi. Thì mình biết là chất lượng nó ngon hơn số lượng, bởi vì là một ngày mình ra một clip thôi, và một cái clip mình ra nó sẽ chất lượng và nó không có nhảm nữa, nên mà mình sẽ cũng có ý tưởng lại, không phải là đụng cái gì cũng quay. Một ngày mình chỉ ra một cái video. Nếu mà cần thì đi chơi thì là mình sẽ ra 2 video, còn nếu mà ngày bình thường thì mình chỉ ra một ngày một cái video trên kênh Thiện Nhất Nguyên và là kênh HM Vlog, mỗi ngày một cái. Khi nào kênh HM Vlog mở lại thì mình sẽ cũng làm như vậy, một ngày ra một cái video và Thiện Nhất Nguyên cũng ra một cái video. Thì mong các bạn thông cảm, cảm ơn tất cả các bạn rất là nhiều. Thì hôm nay mình sẽ làm một cái nhà băng. Nhà băng thì nói chung là cái nhà để nước đá vô, thì trên YouTube cũng có nhiều người làm rồi, nhưng mà mình thì muốn trải nghiệm thôi. Đây là cái nhà tắm, thì nhà tắm cũ các bạn, cái nhà tắm hình như là lúc mà năm 90 mấy luôn á, cho nên là nó như gì nè. Còn đây là bao, 4 cái bao để mà mình gọc ra, cái mình chảy trong đây nè các bạn, mình chảy trong cái sàn này nè để cho nó sạch lên đó, cái mình để nước đá rồi đừng cho nó chảy ra. Đấy, còn đây là cái thao để mà mình đập nước đá, hồi nãy như mình nói rồi. Thì rất là đơn giản thôi. Đây là cái nhà tắm này rất là cũ, rồi một tí nữa mình sẽ đợi bạn mình ra để mình làm. Nếu các bạn đã theo dõi mình từ cấp con số 0 đến giờ kênh HN Vlog á, thì các bạn sẽ biết người bạn đó là ai. Đó là Trần Minh Quy. Thì Quy là H, còn mình là Nguyên là N, là HN đó. Kênh đó thật sự là do bạn Quy lập, nhưng mà lúc đó thì bạn Quy cái dạng như làm bắt học hành rồi đó, rồi ba mẹ không cho, còn mình thì nói chung là mình cũng lẫn trốn cha mẹ để làm lúc đó thôi. Nhưng mà khi mà mình kiếm được tiền trên YouTube rồi đó thì ba mẹ mình ủng hộ mình làm. Thì tí nữa thì Trần Minh Quy sẽ ra. Nếu các bạn là theo dõi mình sẽ biết Trần Minh Quy là ai. Đấy, rất đẹp trai luôn.